So courage. I thought I might have a little chat about courage, because people have an idea that they can grow courage in a vacuum, but actually we only grow courage by doing things that are courageous. We grow courage by doing things that are difficult. That's what I did when I was younger, and I was fearful, and I knew my kingdom was there. I knew I'd got potential. I knew I'd got ultimate potential. I knew I could do anything. I just knew that between me and that potential was a lot of fear. And to overcome that fear, I needed courage, but I didn't know where to find the courage from. I didn't realise that courage could be grown. And then as I studied and went into different areas, and later on started to study some of the Bibles, I recognised that all of the people I admired, people like Gandhi and people like Muhammad and people like Jesus Christ, people like Musashi, who was more of a warrior, but people like Sun Tzu. As I started to study the different people, I recognised that all of them had moments of terror. All of them had moments when their courage didn't stretch to the amount of fear they were facing. It didn't encompass it. It didn't, so most of them were placed in situations that were beyond them, and their courage expanded and stretched. I said there's a great line at the beginning of the Quran where it says wealth was within Muhammad's reach, but it was beyond his grasp. So he hadn't expanded his awareness enough, and he hadn't expanded his courage enough. I know when he was on the mountains of Saudi Arabia, and it's interesting if you get a chance to read a good book about the life of Muhammad. He was a very beautiful man and a very courageous warrior. If you read about him, he recognised, like all of the great prophets, his courage grew according to his responsibility. So if he wasn't taking on more responsibility, if he wasn't going out and serving, if he wasn't going out and challenging the social mores, he didn't need to grow his courage. What's the point? What's the need of it? It's about necessity. So when he was given the Quran on the mountains of Saudi Arabia by the Archangel Gabriel, the story says that Muhammad was so afraid he ran down the hill and hid. He hid under a coat. He begged his wife to hide him. He was so terrified. And his wife was an amazing woman. She was an entrepreneur. She taught him about business, and she said to him, "This is a good thing. This is a good sign. Come out. Let's face this. Let's look at this." And this man that was terrified took on the responsibility of what he'd been given, and his courage expanded. His courage expanded according to the responsibility he took on. That's something we can all do, and we can do it in small increments. I know when I started, I was working in a factory. I was existing. I was living, but I was living way within my means. I was afraid to be a city on a hill. I was afraid to be visible. I was afraid to step out. I was afraid to say or do the difficult things or have an opinion. But when I, at one time, had a very bad depression, decided that I was going to confront all my fears, I didn't realise what I was doing when I confronted my fears was that I was growing courage. The courage grew. In fact, it grew from being a man that was afraid of a spider in the bath, or if there was a spider in the ceiling, this guy here wouldn't go to bed because he just kept thinking it's going to crawl down and crawl across my mouth. So I became afraid of everything. Specifically, I became afraid of change. It's because I didn't really know my mind. I didn't know who I was. I had no control of my mind. I had no control of my sensual body, no control of my physical body. So I decided to write all my fears down on a piece of paper, on a fear pyramid, and confront my fears one by one. This is a story I've told before, but what I've never mentioned was the fact that in confronting my fears, of course, I'm growing my courage. So I went from being afraid of spiders to being able to stand on nightclub doors and deal with life and death situations. And also I grew enough courage to be able to leave the social mores, leave the factory job and find freedom. I became self-employed 20 years ago. I was a full-time martial artist for a long time. My job was training in and teaching martial arts. I went to lots of places where I got battered. I got battered in boxing. I got battered at the wrestling club. My first lesson at the wrestling club, I chose the biggest guy in there to fight with, and he picked me up above his head and held me there like I was a twig. When I went to the boxing, they were queuing up to batter me. When I went to the judo, Neil Adams stopped the class and said, "Take it easy on Geoff." So I was always putting myself at the feet of somebody. I was always at the bottom of someone's class. What was I doing? Of course I was developing skills, but I was growing courage. I was placing myself in situations which were fearful. So I grew my courage bit by bit, and the courage that took me onto the door is the same courage that enabled me to write a book. It takes a lot of courage to write a book. Well, it takes a lot of courage to be honest. It takes a lot of courage to publish that honesty. It takes a lot of courage to go and stand in front of somebody and say, this is my book and this is my honesty, this is what I've learned. So you grow your courage. And of course there have been moments in my life, there are moments in my life all the time when that courage fails me and I fall back and I feel threatened, I feel intimidated. And then I remember who I am. And I remember that I have the right and I have the ability to respond. So I go back up to that gear because I know that courage is there, that's in store for me, that's safe. So I go back to that, I know where that is. And sometimes it's just a matter of transferring that courage over into different areas. So you might have a guy that can have a fight on the door. One of my friends was an amazing fighter. He would fight 3 or 4 men at once. But when he got a mortgage, it threatened him so much to having a mortgage for a house that he had a breakdown and his marriage broke down. He just couldn't cope with, he couldn't transfer that courage across. I have other people who are titans, absolute leaders when they're working in violent situations, but they can't take themselves out of a menial factory job. They haven't got the courage, they haven't got the ability to transfer that courage over into another area and say, okay, I'm going to leave this and I'm going to go and educate myself so I can do something better, so I can become a captain of industry. So courage is something that grows, it's something that wants to grow, it's something that we can grow, but we need to lean into the sharp edges, we need to do the difficult things, and we need to recognise that it's okay to be afraid. Jesus was afraid in the Garden of Gethsemane. He actually said to God, take this cup from me. If it be thy will, I'll do this, but take this cup from me. Muhammad was afraid. Arjuna, when Arjuna goes into battle, Arjuna was afraid. It's saying it's okay, we're human, we're in the human body. While we've got a body, we are going to have to deal with the sensual body, we are going to have to deal with the adrenal system, we are going to have to deal with the decay of the physical body, we're going to have to deal with illness, we're going to have to deal with threats to the mind, because that's part of being in the human condition. But what we can do is we can grow courage, develop courage, we can change our perception of the aches and pains and the senses of the body. Like I said in one of the other podcasts, if we recognise that all of the gold is in the things we fear, it changes the perception of the fear, and then we can go to the fear, sit in the fear, embrace the fear, dissolve the fear, and release the effulgence, release that intrinsic power that's locked within our own fears. That's, it's really just about changing perception, and changing perception is just about expanding your core beliefs, and you can expand your core beliefs just by educating yourself about how the human body works. People have issues with money, but if you have issues with money, all you need to do is go onto the internet, go onto Google and type in what is money, and then follow the leads, and you'll realise that money doesn't physically exist. Money is a perception. And the reason I'm saying that is if you can change your perception of what something is, you can actually change your way of dealing with it. If you have an issue with fear, you can change your perception to fear and say that this is where the gold is. If I go into the fear, this is where I'm going to grow and expand. Then the nature of that discomfort grows, like a bodybuilder. When a bodybuilder gets the massive burn, the massive pain when he trains, he associates that pain with growth. Because his perception has changed, he actually enjoys the sensation of the burn. So when he trains, he goes into the burn quickly, he stays in the burn long. He does specific exercises to keep him in the burn because he knows that's where the growth is. That's just about changing perception. And we can do that with fear, we can do that with anything, with money. I did it with money when I was younger, and we were brought up to believe that money was evil, money was dirty lucre, filthy lucre, and it's the root of all evil. I just started to challenge that, started to look at that. I didn't believe it, I didn't believe that was true. It either came from the churches, who were very, very rich, or it came from ignorant people who were very, very poor. People that attacked you either had lots of money and were using it for infrastructure to promote their own word, or they had no money and they were afraid of it. But when you just do a basic search on the internet, you'll realise that money doesn't physically exist. That perception, it basically says money is an exchange of energy, and the value of that is based on perception. So if people's perception of you is that you are good at keeping a vow, good at keeping a promise, that you deliver the goods, their perception of you will grow. The only way for them to change their perception of you is for you to change your perception of you. If you don't even trust yourself, if you're divided against yourself, no one's ever going to trust you. So changing your perception about something will actually change the very nature of the thing you're looking at. So if we look at fear, we look at the adrenals, we look at the way the body works, we look at the actual physical release, the actual fight or flight, the actual endocrine system. When we start studying that, we recognise that it's biological, and that the mind reacts by asking us to run away because it's about survival. And if we recognise then that most situations today don't need running away from. They just need to be embraced. We just need to change our perception of them. And we can do that, like I said, by educating ourselves. I've got a great book called Stress Buster, which is what I wrote as my master's thesis when I did a master's degree for the Society of the Martial Arts. And it's all about that. It's all about the adrenal glands. It's all about our perception to fear. It's all about using fear. All of these things can be changed. Courage can be expanded. Courage can be grown. But it isn't going to be grown, by being comfortable. There's no growth in comfort. Something it says in the Divine Comedy, Dante's Inferno, your fame is waiting, but you won't find it from a cushion and you won't find it from your bed. You need to be putting yourself in difficult situations, and in difficult situations you grow courage. In the situations that you are afraid of, when you go into the places where you're afraid, the object of your fear will dissolve, will be liberated, the energy will be released, and you'll get it, and there'll be an expansion. It's conceptually very simple, but it's one of the most difficult things you'll ever do. So it's kind of saying that all of the people that we admire also felt fear, but they grew courage by stepping into their fear. So I'm just trying to encourage you to look at the areas in your life where there is hidden treasure and it's hidden in plain sight. Gradually turn into it. I've done a book called Fear, the Friend of Exceptional People, which gives you a step-by-step guide on how to do this, and you will be able to release that treasure.